Hello, welcome to Media Snack, live from New York.
Greetings from London.
So I'm rubbing my hands on this one, not just
I know
because
you
it's
like this one.
freezing cold in New York at the moment, this time of year. Payment terms. We're going to be talking about payment terms, everybody's favorite topic. And we've touched on this a number of times over the years, and we've written so many op-eds and been part of discussions on payment terms. No, it's not going away. We're going to discuss the case for both sides, really, because this is a fair thing. It's a highly emotive and sensitive topic, and one where I really hope, if you're watching, and we're streaming live, obviously, if you're watching this live, please add commentary. We'll keep an eye on the comments. I'd love to get your thoughts. And if you're watching afterwards, please comment down below or send us direct messages. Tell us what you think about this, because we really want to understand where the payment terms conversation has got to. But in this episode, we're going to unpack really some of the principles and concerns around payment terms. And then David, as usual, is going to give us 3 killer tips for what may be the right way to approach payment terms. Welcome to Media Snack, the live weekly show where we unpack the important questions that you all have about media, agencies, marketing, and more. If you're new to the channel, it's great to have you join us. Subscribe below to get alerts of all upcoming weekly episodes. Right, so let's do this. David, what's the question of the week?
So what are fair payment terms? What's considered as fair payment terms?
And I think we're going to try and answer that.
Yeah.
We're going to try and answer that. Because that's really what, it's not our job, but that's what we try and do on the show. Answer your questions. So this is a question that we get asked a lot. A few people have requested it as a question that we deal with on the show, hence we're doing it today. There's been some commentary in the press recently. It's kind of bubbled up again. It comes around periodically, particularly on the back of some large pitches. Often that's the point at which it triggers discussion. So as usual, we've kind of taken a moment. We've consulted with others externally, as we often do, to try to kind of put together perspective on this thing, just to give you an idea. As I mentioned at the beginning, if you've got thoughts on this, and I'll probably say at the end, maybe this can be another catalyst for a really good discussion on payment terms, and hopefully we can get to a place where the industry is happy with some principles around this stuff, because that's kind of missing. So let's just think about payment terms. If you're not aware what payment terms are, when we talk about payment terms, that is part of the agreement between an advertiser and their agency. And we're thinking here about media agencies and the implications on the media supply chain specifically. Yeah. But there will be payment terms with any supplier that you use as a business, right? Is that you contract with them, they do the work, they send you an invoice, and then there's a period of time by which you have to pay that invoice. You have to pay them for the work done. Very rare that an advertiser will pay an agency upfront to do work. Normally it's after a period of time. Yeah. And there are a number of different legal constructs around the world in different markets on what are considered fair terms. And sometimes those vary depending on the relative sizes of the businesses involved. We're not going to get into all those different nuances. But it's the period of time between an invoice and a payment. And for an advertiser, it's become a really interesting thing to think about, because media particularly is a huge amount of money each year that a company will spend or invest. And so actually incremental lengthening of payment terms can feel like a really good thing. And there are a number of companies that will specifically calculate their free cash flow and therefore their attractiveness to investors and things like that. These are fundamental kind of business metrics. Payment to the supplier payment terms. And if you're an advertiser spending the millions, hundreds of millions, or even billions of dollars, stretching your payment terms from, let's say, 30 days to 90 days is a really interesting calculation on your cash flow. And it can look amazing. It could be maybe somewhat flattering as a business, but it does look like good numbers. So there's an interest on the advertiser side to maybe stretch those payment terms, particularly in businesses that are trying to raise money or have investors. That's what we tend to see. It's controversial because paying agency fees, like delaying paying agency fees, is kind of one thing. But when it's pass through money, when it's the media budget, which really the agency is taking and then spending on your behalf somewhere else, if the payment terms that sit between the advertiser and the agency are much longer than the payment terms between the agency and the publisher, let's say, then the agency has to pay the publisher before they got the money from the client. And that is agencies say is a problem, because they are having to act like a credit facility. And obviously that money has to come from somewhere. And so you can imagine this runs to the billions of dollars. You've got agencies actually having to negotiate billions of dollars worth of overdrafts, really, or credit facilities, or get insurance against this money, which is a cost to them. And it's a precarious position to be in. So in its bluntest form, you hear agencies say, we are not a bank, we're not your credit facility, as part of a financial engineering exercise for you, clients, so that your cash flow can look better, because we have obligations to the market, maybe of 30-day payment terms, and you're asking us for 90 days. And so we have to kind of, what they say, float that money for 60 days. So you can, that's the challenge of being of the agency. Therefore, negotiations around payment terms can sometimes blow up, right? Because agencies are fiercely defending what they think are the right payment terms, but the advertiser, for their own reasons, is looking to push payment terms, and that these are totally legitimate reasons. Typically, I mean, they're motivated by the right thing. They're not trying to punish agencies or abuse agencies. They're trying to do what's right for their business. So actually trying to find and strike the right balance is critical. So therefore, this question of what is fair payment terms is this mythical question, right? So we're going to try and answer that today. What I want to share with you is what some of the implications of pushing payment terms are, just so we're aware. Because I've said the implication is that the agency has to kind of fund that. But the risk to the advertiser, there are downsides of pushing for longer payment terms. Obviously, they have their own upsides. There are downsides. If you, and we, over the years, we've seen and heard examples of advertisers looking to stretch beyond the 60-day, let's say, which was, or 45-day, which was traditional payment terms, up to 90 or even 120. Crazy. We've even seen agencies willingly offer up even greater 180 plus days, which is kind of crazy. But the implications of that are significant. The first thing it means is that if you're an advertiser and you want someone to float, let's just say $100 million, but often it's in the billions of dollars. You want them to float $100 million, that's a lot of money, for 2 months, then only certain agencies are going to be able to do that. And only giant agency groups would even be able to negotiate the kind of credit facilities that allow them to do that. So as an advertiser, you are immediately narrowing your options. If you really want to push for 90 or 120-day payment terms, there's only going to be 2 or 3 agency groups that are going to be able to do that for you. So maybe you're limiting your opportunities, and therefore your talent and all these kind of things. We're also finding that agencies are being much more selective about the advertisers that they work with based on payment terms, and they're often asking us up front in pitches for clarity on payment terms. And we've observed in either pitches that we've run where we're encouraging the advertiser to push for fair payment terms, that if the agency doesn't feel that that's going to be the case, that they drop out. And we hear of many pitches driven by payment terms, not run by us but by some others, where agencies don't want to play. They want to waste time in a pitch. They want to cut straight to the financial negotiation. So it perhaps undermines the ambition of your marketers to try and find great agencies and talent and effectiveness and innovation, because really the question is, how much money do you need us to float? And then we're going to take a point of view on that basis. As I said, the agency will have to go and get a credit facility, right? And that will cost them money. You don't get a $100 million overdraft for free, unfortunately. That money, agencies are not prepared to pay for that. So as an advertiser, you then have to think about how the agency is going to be clawing that cost back.
That's right.
Because an agency will not be funding this out of goodwill. And so if you're asking for payment terms, you're somewhere along the line going to have to pay for that credit facility, and you'll probably end up paying more than if you just negotiated your own credit facility somewhere else. So it might be a short-term way of kind of hiding a cost. It is, and we hear this from agency leadership, incredibly demotivating for your agency teams to feel like the priority of their work is a financial engineering exercise.
Yeah.
And that the great value of an agency is kind of floating this money for cash flow. And an agency CEO will tell us, and hopefully they would tell you as an advertiser, you're not going to get the best out of us. You're not going to be a priority client. You're not going to get the best talent. You're not going to get the best opportunities. We are going to literally try and engineer your money to mitigate this risk for us and deliver you these payment terms, because clearly that's your priority. And it really undermines the value of the agency. In an extreme example, and I've had an agency CEO say this to me, an extreme example, but this gives you an idea. This CEO had said to me, basically the payment terms then do the media planning, right? If you've pushed me on 120 plus days, what happens is, as an agency planner, we can only use certain vendors, because we're only going to go to publishers or media vendors where we can negotiate 120-day payment terms. And most vendors won't do that.
Yeah.
And typically either only the biggest ones or the stupidest ones or the most desperate ones are going to accept those. So your field of opportunity in media choicing, in planning, is narrowed hugely. And the agency kind of knows where they're going to put the money, because they're going to put the money where they get the best terms, not what's best for you as an advertiser. And that is probably where the greatest value impact is of payment terms, because it just narrows the field for planning. And if you're a planner in an agency and you've got a client who wants 120, 150, 180-day terms, you kind of feel like, what's the point of being a planner? Like, this is not the business that I want to work on, right? I'm going to focus myself and bring my own creativity and innovation and thinking to advertisers that really, where I can make an impact, and I have, a wider palette of opportunities to think about.
Yeah.
So it can have a really detrimental impact in the effectiveness of all those media dollars. And so tying it back to a financial engineering exercise treats media dollars as a commodity play, and it's not an investment in growth. And so whilst in the advertiser, the finance or the procurement community, and let me just pause for a second and say, we talked about the role of procurement. Really good procurement understand the impact of payment terms. Okay, this is not a beat up procurement exercise at all, because lots of really good procurement are seeing the implications. But when that's being driven, then media dollars are not an investment in growth, and they are not serving the needs of the marketer. So as a marketer, if you're in a business pushing 120-day payment terms on media agencies, you are likely to lose effectiveness and talent and quality and all the things that you want from your media agency relationship. I'm going to stop there for a second, because these are the, which is highly emotive. We're very excited about this stuff, but we sit between the two, right? We see the difficulty in trying to change the culture and the narrative in the advertiser when payment terms is such an important financial lever for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we really want to provoke consideration and considerate thinking.
Yeah.
Getting some comments through. So let me have a look at those. Why don't we pass, David, to you? Think about, you've got to answer the question now, right? What's the fair payment term? So,
well, I'll give you my considered perspective, and that is nothing beyond 60 days. And I thought you described the situation very well there, Tom. The fundamental issue, if you're a marketeer now, is that the market has changed. 5 years ago, it was a buyer's market, right? The big advertisers could go there and demand, in some cases, overly aggressive payment terms, and they could probably get away with them from the agencies, because the agencies were so desperate and at times sort of subservient to the brands. That's no longer the case. Okay, you described pitches where, just in case there is the indication of a slightly aggressive payment term, the agency may walk away. Okay, and even if they don't, if they do accept your aggressive payment terms, they will be spending most of their waking hours thinking about how to generate income for themselves, rather than focusing on objectives for you as an advertiser. So the kind of things that I would be thinking of if I was a media director or as a marketing leader in brand is I would be figuring out who dictates payment terms within my organization. Is it the finance department? Is it the procurement? Is it the CPO team? And how do I then begin to champion this cause for more fair and equitable payment terms? Because it will have a material impact on the value generation from my media investments. That's absolutely critical. So I would go and partner up with my procurement peer and figure out the most seductive and compelling argument, business case internally to allow me to go and convince the business that nothing more than 60 days should be appropriate to that agency relationship. That's the first thing that I would do. The second thing I would do is I'd go and talk to the agency, understand what payment terms they have with their own media owners and their own suppliers. Use that as a business case to go internally. What I find sometimes ironic is that advertisers push really aggressive payment terms in the knowledge that they allow their agency partners to bankroll that media inventory. Yet they push back on the suggestion of that agency allowing any inventory media being plowed into their system, right? You can't have it both ways. You can't allow the agency to bankroll your media investment and then not allow them to have proprietary access to kind of inventory when they think you should have it, right? So understand where the payment terms sit within the agency and then speak to the trade bodies, get independent third-party objective counsel, get the WFA, get ISBOL, get companies like ours, ID Comps, to come and provide a perspective on an independent perspective on the marketplace to your finance teams to allow them to understand perhaps better the implications of pushing through these payment terms. And then thirdly, if all else fails, because you're right, some of these payment terms are so deeply rooted within the financial mechanisms of that organization, if nothing else will work, then at least try and find a compromise. Try and separate payment terms for working media, so the media that is actually going to the publishers, and perhaps the payment terms for your fees. You know, maybe it's going to be easier to accept 5% for an agency, whatever it might be, in terms of accepting longer payment terms rather than the 95% in terms of the media fees. But remember, and now this has never been more truer. You get the agency that you deserve, right? So if you go to market with overly oppressive and aggressive payment terms and they accept, then just be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. Very good. We've got loads of comments. Maybe just quickly pull up some of these. We're running a poll on YouTube and we'll share the results towards the end. We asked what are fair payment terms. I'll be interested to hear what your thoughts are on that. Actually, it's a good idea to do a poll, whoever thought of that. Let me just suggest we pull up, we've got a number of very good comments actually from Matt Kassendorf. So I think let's just pick one of those out. So if those of you that know Matt works for the 4As, which is the trade body in the US representing agencies. And I know Matt is very passionate about payment terms. So I'm glad that you're watching, Matt. Let's pull up that first one at 1111. Agencies should never be asked to be a bank, even given the potential financial benefits of client holdings fund. It's wrong. No, putting that in ethical frame. Interesting. And another one from Matt, which was the most recent one, which is a really good question. How can we quantify the damage done? If you want damage done to proper media planning for terms over 60 days. That's a really interesting idea. Something maybe agencies might have a point of view on. I'm going to come on to talk in a second about agency perspective. I'd like to just bring up Amy's comment as well. Amy Armstrong. Amy, so glad that you're watching this as well. I know that you're passionate about this. Amy, for those of you who don't know, is global CEO of Initiative Media Agency. Interesting insight there is that actually more than ever, clients are asking for longer payment terms. So maybe it's not getting better. We thought maybe it was getting better. Longer than 60 days. Thank you, Amy. And then let's pull up Nick's comment at 11:14. This is great to hear. Won't procurement win that argument? Well, I think this is a really important question, Nick, because as I referenced very briefly, and this is what we'll link to. We did a show a few weeks ago, you may have seen, where we talked about, what does media procurement do? It's true that maybe some media procurement is still pushing on cost reduction, savings, extending payment terms as being the benefit that they can add to the media function. But we're very pleased to see that there's a really good and fast growing network and community of very smart, not that these others aren't smart, but progressive thinking procurement that absolutely understands some of these impacts. We're not in isolation here of having some kind of privileged perspective of the impact of that. Agencies tell us all the time. We sympathize and we try and balance these things off. And we try and find the right solution for the marketer, right? So our job here and in our business is to represent the marketer and make sure that they're getting the best for their money. And we're flagging payment terms as being a risk to that value. So I think you're right, Nick, to frame it as an argument potentially, but that's what David's tips are really designed to make you think, is that as a marketer, these are conversations you've got to have internally and understand the benefits and the drawbacks of these things. There's loads of comments. We won't go through all of them. Thank you so much for that. Just by way of kind of just quick wrap up, one thing I wanted to add, great that we've got agencies watching this as well. And I want more agencies to be more vocal about payment terms, because it's an observation of ours is that agencies will complain about payment terms, rightly, okay? But then you put them in a pitch, and often without even asking about payment terms, they offer payment terms. And so we've had clients that have said, we operate on 45-day payment terms, but as part of the agency's submission, they say, we'll offer you 90-day payment terms. And you go, well, hang on, you were just complaining about payment terms and how catastrophic that is and all the implications of it. You are offering up payment terms in excess of what the client's asking. You're thinking that you're sweet talking procurement there. You've misread, you think that this is a swaying winning argument. And of course, the minute you put that on the table, then you've got someone on the client side going, well, that's interesting, 90-day payment terms. They get the calculator out, they figure it out, they go, wow, that's a lot of money. And it becomes part of the discussion. And it's never intended to be part of the evaluation. And you make it part of the evaluation. Yeah. And then you make every other agency be evaluated on payment terms beyond that. And, we try and hold this back. Someone at some point is going to say, would the other agencies go to 90 days? And you create a race for the bottom.
Yeah.
And it does you no favors. So that you've got to listen, if you're going to push back on this stuff, you've got to hold firm. And it's difficult because that dangling payment terms in front of some advertisers can be very seductive. As much as we might coach them to be fair, then you go and ruin it all by offering, payment terms as a competitive leverage. So agencies got to be really, really clear. Matt and the team at the 4As can do a great job here, and they do, to counsel their members to be quite firm on payment terms and be able to articulate. I think that there needs to be more of a narrative from agencies or agency trade bodies, where we can say that this is what we consider as an industry fair payment terms, and these are the implications, right? We're not saying we won't do 90 days, but you just have to understand this is going to be some of the implications, some of which we've laid out here. Hopefully we've done some of that justice. Good. Okay, lots more comments coming through. We will save that. You can watch those back on the repeat. They'll be on YouTube. This is something where you're going to have a view clearly, right? If you're watching this after the event, which many hundreds or sometimes thousands of you do, please leave comments down below. Message us directly. Tell us what you think. We answer these questions often to be a provocative or catalyst to a change of thinking. And we hope we're providing somewhat of a service in doing that. But it requires your participation if we're going to help as an industry kind of make progress. If you're not a subscriber, thanks for joining. Please subscribe. Be alerted to future episodes where we tackle these kind of things. We're all trying to make the industry better, so appreciate your time. Anything else to add?
That's all.
Good. Okay, that's it for this week. See you next time.
Bye for now.
Media Snack is brought to you each week by ID Comms, the award-winning growth consultancy specializing in media. We help advertisers on a life cycle to growth in 3 service areas: operations, partnerships and optimization that transform your media investments into real company growth. Whether you're planning an agency pitch, upgrading your media organization, want to learn new best practice, or simply get better performance from your media investments, you can find out more at idcomms.com/growth.